Success is often described as the result of strategy, discipline, and smart systems. Businesses spend countless hours designing processes, building workflows, and organizing operations so that everything runs smoothly. Yet many of these systems never reach their full potential. On paper, they look perfect, but in reality, people struggle to follow them, teams lose motivation, and consistency slowly fades away. What many leaders fail to realize is that a system is not truly alive until people understand the story behind it. Without storytelling, even the most carefully designed system can feel cold, mechanical, and disconnected from the people who are meant to carry it forward. When people hear the word system, they usually imagine technology, automation, and structured procedures. They picture flowcharts, software platforms, and step-by-step instructions that guide tasks from beginning to end. While these elements are important, they only represent the surface level of a functioning system. The deeper layer involves human engagement. Systems depend on people to operate them, improve them, and remain committed to them over time. If the individuals involved do not understand why the system exists or what larger purpose it serves, the process gradually loses its strength. Storytelling fills that gap between structure and meaning. It transforms systems from simple procedures into narratives that people can understand and believe in. Instead of seeing a process as a list of tasks that must be completed, individuals begin to see it as part of a journey that leads somewhere important. This shift in perception changes the way people approach their work. They no longer follow the system simply because they are told to do so. They follow it because they understand the role it plays in a bigger story. Think about the difference between reading instructions and hearing a meaningful story. Instructions can be clear and useful, but they rarely inspire emotion. They tell you what to do, but they do not always explain why it matters. A story, however, invites people into an experience. It reveals the problem that needed solving, the struggle that took place, and the transformation that followed. When systems are explained through stories, people naturally remember them better and feel more connected to the outcome. Imagine a company that introduces a new process for responding to customer inquiries. If employees are simply told to follow a new set of guidelines, the change might feel like just another rule added to their workload. Some employees may follow the process carefully, while others may skip steps when things become busy. Over time, the consistency of the system begins to weaken. Now imagine that the same company shares a story about why the process was created. They describe a situation where a customer once felt ignored and nearly left for a competitor. They explain how improving the response system helped rebuild trust and turned that frustrated customer into a loyal supporter. The moment employees hear that story, the system becomes more than just a set of instructions. It becomes a reminder of how their actions influence real people. The process now carries emotional weight because it represents the company's commitment to treating customers with care and attention. When people feel that connection, they are far more likely to follow the system consistently and take pride in doing it well. Human beings have always relied on storytelling to make sense of the world around them. Long before written manuals and digital tools existed, knowledge was shared through spoken stories. Communities passed down lessons about survival, cooperation, and leadership through narratives that were easy to remember and repeat. Stories helped people understand complex ideas by turning them into experiences that could be imagined and felt. Even today, our brains respond strongly to storytelling because it activates both logic and emotion at the same time. When someone listens to a story, they begin to picture the events unfolding in their mind. They imagine the characters, the challenges they face, and the decisions they must make along the way. This mental engagement makes the information more memorable than a simple list of facts. It also encourages empathy because listeners begin to feel connected to the experiences being described. When systems are presented through stories, they benefit from this natural human tendency to remember and relate to narratives. Another powerful advantage of storytelling is its ability to simplify complexity. Many systems fail because they are explained in ways that feel overwhelming or difficult to understand. Documents may contain detailed explanations filled with technical language that leaves people confused about what truly matters. When individuals feel overwhelmed, they may hesitate to fully engage with the system, or avoid using it altogether. A well-told story can cut through that confusion by highlighting the core idea behind the process. Instead of describing every technical detail, a story focuses on the essential lesson that the system is meant to teach. It shows how the process works in a real situation and what result it is designed to produce. This makes the system easier to understand and easier to remember. People may forget specific instructions over time, but they are far less likely to forget a story that clearly demonstrates the purpose behind those instructions. Storytelling also helps build alignment within teams. In any organization, different individuals bring their own perspectives, experiences, and priorities to their work. Without a shared understanding of the company's mission, these differences can create confusion about how systems should be used. One department might interpret a process one way, while another department interprets it differently. Over time, these inconsistencies can weaken the overall structure of the organization. A strong narrative brings everyone back to the same central purpose. When teams hear the same stories about why the company exists and what it hopes to achieve, they begin to see their individual roles as part of a collective journey. Systems become tools that help move the story forward rather than isolated procedures that exist without context. This shared narrative creates unity and makes it easier for people to collaborate effectively. Leaders often underestimate the role storytelling plays in guiding behavior. Many assume that clear instructions and detailed policies are enough to ensure consistency. While rules can provide structure, they rarely inspire dedication on their own. People tend to follow rules more faithfully when they understand the values and experiences that shaped those rules in the first place. Stories reveal those values in action and show how they influence decisions within the organization. For example, a company might say that it values innovation and creative thinking. However, those words may not mean much unless employees hear stories about real situations where creativity led to meaningful results. When people learn about moments where someone took initiative to solve a difficult problem, they gain a clearer picture of what innovation truly looks like. These stories act as living examples that guide behavior more effectively than written statements alone. Another important role of storytelling is its ability to build trust both inside and outside the organization. People tend to trust experiences more than abstract claims. If a company simply says that its systems are effective, the statement may sound impressive, but it does not provide much proof. Stories offer a more convincing form of evidence because they show the system working in real situations. When employees hear stories about how a process helped resolve a difficult challenge, they gain confidence that the system truly works. The same principle applies to customers who are evaluating a brand. Hearing about real experiences where a company's systems created positive outcomes makes the organization feel more credible and reliable. Stories provide a human perspective that numbers and statistics alone cannot fully capture. Storytelling also allows systems to travel through an organization more naturally. Written instructions often remain confined to manuals or training sessions, but stories move freely through conversations. A meaningful story can be shared during meetings, repeated during training, or discussed casually between colleagues. Each time the story is told, it reinforces the same lesson and strengthens the understanding of the system. Over time, these shared stories become part of the organization's culture. Culture is not simply defined by official policies, but by the behaviors and values that people demonstrate every day. Stories highlight those behaviors and help new members of the team understand what the organization stands for. When employees repeatedly hear stories about moments of dedication, creativity, or teamwork, they begin to see those qualities as expectations rather than exceptions. This cultural influence is one of the reasons storytelling plays such a critical role in system success. A system may provide structure, but culture determines whether people choose to follow that structure consistently. When storytelling reinforces the values behind a system, it encourages people to treat the process with care and responsibility. The system becomes a reflection of the organization's identity rather than just a technical tool. Another interesting aspect of storytelling is its ability to inspire long-term commitment. Systems are designed to produce results repeatedly over time. which means they require sustained effort from the people who operate them. Without motivation, even the most efficient process can begin to feel repetitive or uninspiring. Stories remind individuals that their daily actions contribute to something meaningful beyond the immediate task. When people hear stories about the positive impact their work can create, they begin to see themselves as part of that impact. They realize that their role in maintaining the system helps shape the experiences of customers, colleagues, and the organization as a whole. This awareness can transform routine tasks into contributions that carry purpose and significance. Storytelling also plays a vital role during times of change. Organizations constantly evolve as they grow, adopt new technologies, and adapt to shifting market conditions. When a new system is introduced, employees may feel uncertain about how the change will affect their responsibilities. Without context, the new process can appear confusing or unnecessary. Stories provide the context that helps people understand why the change is happening. When leaders explain the challenges that led to the creation of a new system and the goals it aims to achieve, employees gain a clearer sense of direction. They see the system not as a disruption, but as the next chapter in the organization's development. This perspective makes people more willing to embrace the change and contribute to its success. The connection between storytelling and system success becomes even more powerful when organizations intentionally design narratives around their processes. Instead of treating storytelling as something separate from operations, leaders weave stories directly into training, communication, and team discussions. They highlight real experiences that demonstrate how systems solve problems and create value. As these stories circulate throughout the organization, they create a shared understanding that strengthens every level of the system. Employees begin to recognize the patterns and principles that guide their work. They feel connected to the mission that drives the organization forward. Most importantly, they remember the lessons behind the systems they rely on each day. When systems are supported by strong narratives, they become more resilient. Even when challenges arise, people understand the purpose behind the process and remain committed to maintaining it. The system is no longer just a structure built from rules and instructions. It becomes a living framework sustained by the collective belief of the people who use it. If storytelling has the power to strengthen systems, the next question becomes obvious. How do organizations actually design storytelling into their systems in a way that creates real results? Many leaders appreciate the idea of storytelling, but they treat it as something separate from operations. They may use stories in marketing campaigns or speeches, yet their internal systems remain built only on instructions and procedures. When storytelling is intentionally woven into the structure of a system, it becomes a guiding force that shapes how people think, act, and make decisions. The first step in building systems through storytelling is identifying the core narrative of the organization. Every successful system exists to solve a specific problem. Behind every process there is a reason the system was created in the first place. That reason forms the beginning of the story. When people understand the challenge that led to the creation of a system, they gain a deeper appreciation for the role the process plays. Instead of viewing the system as a random collection of steps, they see it as a solution that emerged from experience. For example, many companies develop systems after facing moments of difficulty or failure. A business might create a detailed quality control process after discovering that small errors were damaging customer trust. Another organization might build a strong communication system after realizing that misunderstandings were slowing down productivity. These moments are not just operational lessons, they are powerful stories that reveal why the system matters. Sharing those stories helps employees understand the stakes behind the process. Once the origin story of a system is clear, the next step is connecting that story to everyday actions. Systems often fail when people cannot see how their daily tasks relate to the bigger picture. A story bridges that gap by showing how small actions contribute to meaningful outcomes. When employees understand how their work moves the narrative forward, they approach their responsibilities with greater attention and pride. One effective way to do this is through storytelling during training and onboarding. Instead of overwhelming new team members with technical instructions, organizations can introduce systems through real experiences that illustrate their purpose. A new employee might hear about a situation where the system helped resolve a complex challenge or prevented a serious problem. By learning through stories, employees gain a practical understanding of how the system works before diving into the technical details. Another important element of storytelling within systems is highlighting real examples of success. When people hear stories about colleagues who used the system effectively, it reinforces the idea that the process truly works. These stories show the system in action and provide concrete proof of its value. Over time, these examples create a sense of confidence that encourages others to follow the same approach. Celebrating these stories publicly can have a powerful effect on team morale. When organizations share stories about employees who demonstrated dedication, creativity, or exceptional service while using the system, it sends a clear message about what behaviors are valued. People naturally want to be part of positive stories. By recognizing these moments, leaders encourage others to follow the same path and strengthen the system in the process. Storytelling also helps organizations handle the unexpected situations that every system eventually encounters. No matter how carefully a process is designed, real life will always present challenges that fall outside the standard guidelines. When employees rely solely on rigid instructions, they may feel uncertain when faced with something new. However, when they understand the story and values behind the system, they can make decisions that align with its purpose even in unfamiliar circumstances. Think about a situation where an employee must decide whether to bend a rule in order to help a customer in need. A purely mechanical system might leave little room for judgment. Yet if the employee has heard stories about how the company values long-term relationships and customer trust, they can use that narrative as guidance. The story becomes a compass that helps them choose the action that best reflects the organization's mission. Another powerful benefit of storytelling is its ability to spread systems throughout an organization without constant supervision. Written policies often remain hidden inside documents that few people revisit after training. Stories, on the other hand, naturally travel through conversations. When employees share stories with one another about how the system helped solve a problem or achieve success, the message spreads organically. This natural sharing strengthens the consistency of the system across different teams and departments. Instead of relying solely on formal communication, the organization benefits from a network of shared experiences that reinforce the same principles. The more these stories circulate, the more deeply the system becomes embedded in the culture of the company. Culture plays a critical role in determining whether systems succeed or fail. A system may provide structure, but culture determines how seriously people take that structure. When storytelling becomes part of the culture, it reinforces the behaviors that keep the system strong. Stories about dedication, innovation, and teamwork create examples that others want to follow. These examples shape expectations about how work should be approached. Storytelling also allows leaders to guide the evolution of systems over time. Businesses rarely remain static. As industries change and organizations grow, systems must adapt to new circumstances. If employees believe that systems should never change, they may resist improvements that could make processes more effective. Stories about learning, experimentation, and progress help people understand that adaptation is part of the journey. When leaders share stories about how past challenges led to better systems, employees begin to see change as a positive force rather than a disruption. The organization's narrative becomes one of continuous improvement. Each new system is simply another chapter in a story that is still unfolding. This mindset encourages people to remain open to innovation while staying grounded in the organization's values. Storytelling is equally powerful when organizations communicate their systems to customers and the outside world. Customers rarely see the internal processes that power a business, but they experience the results every time they interact with the brand. When companies share stories about how their systems are designed to serve customers better, those processes gain visibility and meaning. For example, a company might tell the story of how it redesigned its delivery system after listening to customer feedback about long waiting times. By sharing the journey behind the improvement, the business shows that its systems are driven by a genuine desire to serve people better. Customers begin to view the brand as thoughtful and responsive rather than simply transactional. These stories also create emotional connections that strengthen customer loyalty. People enjoy supporting organizations that demonstrate care and purpose. When customers understand the narrative behind a company's systems, they feel more connected to the brand's mission. Their experience becomes part of the same story the organization is telling. Leaders who want to harness the full power of storytelling often integrate it into regular communication. Instead of focusing only on statistics and reports, they highlight stories that illustrate the impact of their systems. A meeting might include a story about how a team member solved a difficult problem using the company's process. A newsletter might share a story about how the system helped deliver exceptional service to a client. These stories remind employees that their daily work contributes to something meaningful. Numbers and metrics are important for measuring success, but stories reveal the human impact behind those numbers. When people see the difference their efforts make, they feel more motivated to maintain the systems that produce those results. Another strategy organizations use is documenting key stories that represent important moments in the development of their systems. These stories become part of the company's institutional memory. They help new employees understand the journey the organization has taken and the lessons that shaped its processes. Over time, these narratives form a historical foundation that strengthens the identity of the company. Storytelling can also inspire creativity and innovation within systems. When employees hear stories about how previous challenges were overcome through resourcefulness and collaboration, they begin to believe that improvement is always possible. They feel empowered to suggest new ideas and refine existing processes. Instead of viewing systems as rigid structures, they see them as frameworks that can evolve with experience. Organizations that neglect storytelling often struggle with disengagement. Employees may follow procedures because they are required to do so, but the lack of meaning behind those procedures makes the work feel routine and uninspiring. Motivation fades and the system gradually loses effectiveness. The process becomes something people tolerate rather than something they value. In contrast, organizations that embrace storytelling create environments where systems feel alive. Employees understand the purpose behind the processes they follow. They recognize how their actions contribute to the organization's larger journey. This sense of connection transforms ordinary tasks into meaningful contributions that move the story forward. The relationship between storytelling and system success ultimately comes down to one essential truth. Systems are built with logic, but they are sustained by people. People do not connect deeply with diagrams or technical instructions. They connect with meaning, purpose, and shared experiences. Stories provide that connection. When storytelling becomes part of the design of a system, it strengthens every aspect of the process. It improves understanding, builds trust, encourages collaboration, and inspires commitment. It helps organizations navigate change while maintaining clarity about their mission. Most importantly, it turns systems from static structures into living frameworks supported by the people who believe in them. In a world where technology continues to advance and businesses grow increasingly complex, the human element remains the foundation of lasting success. Systems may organize work, but stories give that work direction and meaning. When organizations learn to combine strong systems with powerful storytelling, they create a structure that is not only efficient, but also resilient and inspiring. The most successful systems are not remembered only for the steps they contain. They are remembered for the stories they create and the impact those stories have on the people who experience them. When storytelling becomes the heartbeat of a system, success stops being a distant goal and becomes a journey that everyone involved can proudly share.